Final Fantasy X is a game that needs no introduction to anybody who owned a PlayStation 2 or existed in the early 2000s, but since I've got no clue what my demographic actually is, I might as well explain the history of this thing. Development of Final Fantasy X began sometime in 1999, and was developed simultaneously with Final Fantasies 9 and 11, which means Square made two different games that are frequently considered for best RPG in history at the same time. Final Fantasy X was a huge step for the franchise, being the first modern Final Fantasy game, featuring fully 3D environments, much more detailed characters, and full voice acting, putting a lot of pressure on the team over at Squeenix. A lot of ideas were tossed around early on, such as the main character being a sort of plumber with a rebellious personality, a world where everyone dies upon hitting age 17, and a version closer to the final story where you live in a place called Reexamined while a force known as the Crimson Blades fights off monsters. The one constant since the very start of development, though, was the idea of a world ruled by death, where people's fear of dying had shaped their entire culture, with developers saying that the way people react to their inevitable fate would make a great backdrop for a story. The game itself is more of a mystery. We only have a very brief snippet of gameplay from a Square Enix Millennium event that features the main character, who has dark brown hair, or black hair in this version, walking around a grassy area that appears similar to the Calm Lands in 3D. Most interestingly, the camera appears to be fully controllable in this build, a feature that doesn't exist in the final game. We can also see in the menu that he has a regular level, rather than Final Fantasy X's unique sphere grid mechanic for leveling. Aside from that, there's nothing to see, as no battles take place and no other characters are seen. $30 million and 3 years later, the world was greeted with the completed Final Fantasy X, released on the PlayStation 2 in July of 2001, with international releases coming that holiday season. The game launched to near universal praise, with few, if any, scores dipping below a 9 out of 10. The graphics were staggering for the time, the music by Nobuo Uematsu is fantastic as always, the world of Spirit and its characters were beloved, and the combat was a fresh take on the standard ATB or turn-based systems that Square had been using at the time. But all of that was almost 2 decades ago at this point. There's a lot of games that people consider masterpieces that don't hold up to time's ravages. Which ones? Well, I said I don't want to be a contrarian asshole, so I'll leave it to your imagination. Maybe another time. But back on topic, how does Final Fantasy X fare in the year 2020? I guess we'll have to find out. In the interest of disclosure, I'll say that I have played Final Fantasy X once before. That was a long time ago, and I barely remembered any of the game going into this, though. My point being that I have no nostalgic bias that would cause me to defend this title undeservedly. We'll be playing on a PS3 via the 10.10.2 remaster, which means we'll be experiencing what's known as Final Fantasy X International, an upgraded version of the PS2 release that features extra content and some balance changes. This is the version of the game you'd be playing if you bought any modern release of the game. PC, Switch, PS4, whatever. Let me warn you before we begin that these are going to be long videos. Final Fantasy X is a 50-hour RPG after all. Slow build-up and lots of detail is kind of par for the course. If you've been around this channel before, you also know that while I indulge in long diatribes, I also like to let important moments speak for themselves, so there will be instances, such as vital cutscenes, where I will know my place and to shut up, letting the game take the reins and allowing you to judge for yourself without my commentary. To make things more easy to digest, I've taken the liberty of dividing the game into self-titled chapters that will break things up into a more manageable pace. And one last thing, and this one is for the hardcore fans. I won't be using a guide for this playthrough, nor will I be using any busted, overpowered builds. The point is to play the game like any average person would play it. This means I won't be grinding for specific mix items to get shit like Trio of 9999, or arranging my grid in such a way that I can one-shot the final boss. I understand that's a huge part of this game for those so inclined, and the reason it's so replayable, but this is a strictly casual playthrough. I might use 1 or 2 tricks, or get a few special weapons, but this is by no means a definitive breakdown of the best strategies. There's dozens of ways to surpass every challenge in this game, depending on your preference, and covering all of them would be, frankly, ludicrous. With all that squared away, I think it's time we get started, and take another look all these years later at Final Fantasy X.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance.
In the sprawling metropolis of Zanarkand lives the star blitzball player Tidus. Well, in my playthrough anyway. The Final Fantasy X protagonist doesn't technically have a set name, and you can name him whatever you want, as nobody ever refers to him by name in the dialogue. However, just like how, say, the Persona 4 protagonist's real name is Yu Narukami, this guy's real name is Tidus, as it's the name given to him in every appearance outside of this game. Also, yes, to put the mystery to rest among anyone who still isn't aware somehow, Tidus is how you say it, not Titus. His name is based on the Okinawan word for sun, Tita. This pronunciation is confirmed by the Dissidia Final Fantasy games, wherein you can hear people refer to him by name out loud. That was quite the tangent. Anywho, Tidus is on his way to the Zanarkand Dome for a big blitzball match, but he takes time to stop and scoff at a billboard featuring none other than the deceased blitzball legend Jack, who just so happens to be Tidus' father. He's not very fond of his old man, that much is clear. We're then treated to an FMV depicting the blitzball game, and wow, these things still look really good. Quite the technical feat for 2001, especially when you consider how much water there is. And that music, goddamn, son. As the Colosseum crashes down around him, Tidus meets with his guardian/friend/babysitter, Auron.
Hey, not this way!
Look. We call it sin.
Sin?
The pair attempt to escape from the monsters attacking the city, but are quickly surrounded. Auron gives Tidus a sword to defend himself, remarking that it is a gift from his father Jecht. Within mere moments, he goes from looking at it like he's never seen a sword before, to doing fucking backflips. Fine. Whatever. Time to go over some basics of the combat system. Final Fantasy X disregards the ATB and standard turn-based systems from the last few games in exchange for the conditional battle system. In the conditional battle system, you still wait for your turn, just like any other turn-based RPG. The difference is held within this bar on the right side. See the pictures of your party members and the purple meter next to them? That's your cooldown. The lower your cooldown, the quicker you get your turn. More powerful moves add more to the cooldown, while having higher speed stats makes your turn come faster. Of course, this all applies to the enemies as well. The way the battle system works means that turns aren't balanced or traded off. It's entirely possible for the same character to get multiple turns before the opposing team gets a chance to act. When you do get your turn, you're given few options to start with. Don't worry, we'll be getting many more as we go. Right now, all we can do so far as reliable damage dealing goes is basic attack. After cutting through a dozen or so of these bug creatures, Tidus and Auron reach one of the things that's been spawning them. Here, we learn about overdrives. Overdrives are limit breaks. They function identically to limit breaks. I have no idea why they aren't called limit breaks. A character can use their overdrive when the yellow meter below their name turns orange. By default, the gauge charges when you take damage, though there are other ways to fill it that can be unlocked as the game progresses. Every character's overdrive usage is unique, and usually involves playing some sort of minigame / quick time event. Auron's overdrive, Bushido, asks that you quickly input a series of buttons, while Tidus's overdrive, Swordplay, has you stop this meter in the center. You can unlock new versions of each character's overdrive through different means, a basic example being Tidus, who gains new overdrives the more he uses his current ones. No matter how many spawn the duo take out, they continue to be assaulted by more and more. Auron notices a truck full of gas or energy or something hanging off the side of the highway. He instructs Tidus to sever the hitch, which teaches us a very important lesson. A lot of enemies in this game have multiple points to attack, and it may be more advantageous to wail on different parts to see what kind of effects you can get.
Sure. This is it. This is your story. It all begins here.
A thoroughly confused Tidus has a strange vision of his dad in a place he's never seen before. As he's about to reach his father, he snaps awake in the middle of a sunken temple. Wherever this place is, it certainly isn't Zanarkand. Our tired hero scavenges around for some firewood before falling asleep from exhaustion.
What do you want?
It was a bad call. Your team lost because of you.
You came to say that?
It's been 10 years. I thought you'd be crying.
Who, me?
You cried.
Seems like this girl in the wetsuit wants to help, so we have control over her now as well. Her gimmick is Use, an ability that allows her to take advantage of various materials to create one-time use weapons. With her assistance, the monster goes down easy, but it doesn't appear Tidus can communicate with any of these people. That pink text looks to be another language. This color indicates the text is in Bhed, and the only way to decipher it is to collect the Bhed primers scattered throughout the game. Each one translates a different letter, so the more you have, the more you can understand what Bhed characters are saying. As Tidus tries and fails to talk with them, the girl who just gave us a hand knocks him unconscious. On the Bhed's ship, the girl reveals that she speaks English, or Japanese, or whatever language it is that Tidus speaks. She straightforwardly informs him that he has to work to not die. So it's just like real life, cool. In this case, work is diving into underwater ruins for treasure. Convenient, as Tidus is a blitzball player, he can hold his breath for a seemingly infinite amount of time. Magic, I presume. Before we go down, this is when the game starts letting you use Final Fantasy X's level up system, the Sphere Grid. So let's take a look and... Oh. Let's wait a while before we get into this, yeah? Down in the ruins, Tidus gracefully finesses this computer, before restoring power to the area. This seems to upset some local fauna though, as Tidus and the girl are attacked by this big squid thing. The purpose of this boss is to teach the player about trigger commands, special, battle-specific options that appear in certain boss fights. These range from moving to a different location, to interacting with certain machinery, to just speaking with your enemy. In this case, it's used to catch the boss when it tries to swim away and use a powerful attack. With the station's power-up, the Al-Bheds can get to the treasure, and our work is done. Back on the boat, the girl, named Riku, tells Tidus about Al-Bheds, as he looks to have never heard of them. When Tidus tells her he's originally from Zanarkand, her response is bemused confusion. Riku says that Sin destroyed Zanarkand 1,000 years ago, and posits that Tidus might just be amnesiac or something of the sort. She suggests he goes to Luca, a nearby city where someone might be able to recognize him and explain what's happened.
I thought Sin just took me to a faraway place, that I could go back in a day or two. But 1,000 years into the future? No way! Whoa, whoa!
Shin! Shinek Busa! Etonic! Etonic!
Whoa! Wow!
For the second time today, Tidus washes up unconscious somewhere, this time on the shores of Besaid Island. Here he's found by the local islander Waka and his blitzball team.
Hey!
Tidus decides to ask Waka as well about Zanarkand, and he replies with the same story. Zanarkand was completely obliterated 1,000 years ago. He then, unprompted, goes on a religious diatribe about Yevon, the primary religion in the world of Spira that Tidus now finds himself trapped in. According to Yevon's teachings, humans became filled with sin when they became over-reliant on machina, machines that harness magic as a power source. The idea is not dissimilar to the Magitech from Final Fantasy VI. As punishment for mankind's perceived crimes, Yevon created Sin, an enormous whale ghost thingy that can level entire cities with minimal effort. The clear danger of Sin doesn't deter Tidus, however, who hopes that encountering Sin once again might be the key to getting back to Zanarkand. On the lighter side, Waka talks about his blitzball team, the Besaid Aurochs, who've never won a game before. Acknowledging that Tidus is way better at the game than anyone on his team, Waka asks Tidus to join him in the upcoming blitzball tournament in Luca. Tidus doesn't have much else to do until he can get a beat on Sin, and Luca is the same city that Riku recommended he visits, so he accepts. Back at his village, Waka encourages Tidus to present himself to the Summoner, whoever that is. Before he goes, Waka teaches him the Prayer of Yevon, which Tidus instantly recognizes as the Blitzball victory pose from Zanarkand. At the Besaid Temple, Tidus realizes just how obsessed with this Yevon stuff everyone in Spira is, praying to statues of the past summoners who stood against Sin. When the followers react in shock to his ignorance of the summoners, Tidus decides that getting too close to Sin's toxins is a good enough excuse to explain his lack of knowledge to people, as continuing to claim he's from a 1,000-year-old city would make him look, insane. Our blonde boy notices a fancy door at the top of a stairway, which is explained to be the Cloister of Trials, a testing ground for apprentice summoners to prove their worth. Worryingly, the last summoner that entered the cloister has been inside without a word for over a day now. And being that Tidus is a JRPG protagonist, he has an inherent sense of justice and desire to help those in need.
Why don't you go in and help?
There's already guardians in there. Besides, it's forbidden.
Hey, Hey, but what if something happens? What if the summoner dies?
The precepts must be obeyed.
Like I care.
Welcome to the Cloister of Trials. In Final Fantasy X, combat dungeons and puzzle dungeons are separated. That way you can work on finding solutions without being mobbed by random encounters. The first trial isn't even worth getting into detail about, as it's a bottom-level introduction to the concept of the trials. At its most primitive level, the trials are about taking various types of spheres with various effects, and finding a way to use them to progress. One short spherical tutorial later, and Waka runs in after Tidus. Turns out Waka is a guardian, a trusted person who's sworn to protect their summoner.
I've done it. I have become a summoner.
Once everyone's back outside, the summoner demonstrates her newfound power in the front of the village, summoning forth a mythical creature known as an Aeon. An Aeon is a summon spirit. I'm still slightly miffed that all this point was name changing. This Aeon's name is Velfor, though you can name each Aeon individually, like one of them Pokemans that the youth are so into nowadays. That night, Tidus tries to meet with the summoner personally, to apologize for his whole shitting all over her sacred religious customs thing.
I'm Yuna. Thank you so much for your help earlier.
Huh? I'm sorry about that. Wasn't I not supposed to? Guess I kinda overreacted.
Oh no, I was overconfident.
I saw that Aeon thing. That's amazing.
Really? Do you think I can become High Summoner? So, tomorrow then.
Tomorrow?
We're going on the same boat, aren't we?
Oh, really?
We can talk more.
Huh.
You can tell me all about Zanarkand.
After waking up from a nightmare about his father, Tidus catches the faint sound of something occurring outside.
He does look a lot like Chapu. I was surprised too, the first time I saw him. But no matter what he looks like, he isn't Chapu. You shouldn't have brought him here in the first place.
Yeah, but he needed our help.
Excuses again?
Yeah, but...
That's it. No more. Enough, Waka.
A dejected Waka comes back in, and when asked what that was all about, he tells Tidus about his late brother Chapu, who died fighting Sin. He comments that Tidus reminds him a lot of his brother, and in a gesture of good faith gives him Chapu's sword that he never got a chance to use. This is Brotherhood, Tidus' signature weapon that he uses in nearly all promotional art and the various Final Fantasy spin-offs. The next day, Tidus learns that the ship that's taking Yuna to continue her summoner training is the same ship that's taking him and Waka to Luca for the Blitzball tournament. Joining our two sports bros is Sirius and a belt-bedecked black mage, Lulu, and of course the summoner Yuna. The quartet of adventurers set out to the docks where Yuna will begin her quest to find the other chambers of the faith and forge a pact with their Aeons. At which point, if everything goes correctly, she will be able to defeat Sin. Since we have more party members now, we have lots more options available to us and can start making strategies based on each character's primary role. Tidus is your usual warrior type, switched up a bit by his focus on speed over power. In accordance with his emphasis on speed, his primary abilities are haste and slow, spells that affect the rate at which the combatants get their turns. Tidus also learns cheer and flee very early on. Cheer is a free-to-use ability that raises the entire party's physical defense and attack up to 5 times, while flee is a vital ability that lets you escape battles without fail in case you get in a tight spot. It's strange for the main character to function in more of a support role rather than a hardy damage dealer, but that's the role Tidus seems most likely to play throughout the game. Wakka uses a variety of blitz balls in battle, which allows him to hit enemies in the air or far away that other characters struggle with. While this specialized style of combat feels good for adding variety, I assure you that when you're grinding away and keep encountering flying enemies that only Wakka can reliably kill, this mechanic gets very old. His special skills revolve around inflicting status ailments like Dark, which lowers accuracy, or Silence, which disables magic usage. Wakka's overdrive is real, where you're asked to play a slot machine to line up the correct symbols to get the effect you want. Think Tifa's Limit Break from Final Fantasy VII. He earns new overdrives from playing a certain minigame. For reasons I'll later discuss, you most likely won't be unlocking any. Lulu, as I mentioned before, is a black mage, which per Final Fantasy tradition means she wields heavily damaging magic. Attack magic in Final Fantasy X takes 5 different forms. There's the 4 elements, fire, blizzard, water, and thunder, as well as non-elemental spells, like Bio, Flare, and Ultima. The elemental magics can be upgraded over time into their Ra and Ga variations, getting stronger but costing more MP to cast. For reference, if you've never played a Square Enix RPG, the scale goes Fire, Fyra, then to Fyraga. Same thing for the others. Blizzard, Blizzara, Blizzaga, you get the picture. Fire and Blizzard have a love-hate relationship, being both strong against and weak to each other, with Water and Thunder working the same way. This doesn't mean you shouldn't check your opponent's stats and weaknesses, though, as some enemies have weird resistances or even affinities for different elements. You don't want to accidentally deal 0 damage, or even worse, heal the monster you're trying to kill. Lulu's overdrive is Fury. You select any one of her spells and then start spinning the right stick like a madman. The more you charge up the bar, the more casts of that spell will be performed. Yuna is a mix of 2 different classes. She's both a summoner and a white mage. She's likely the only member of your cavalcade of misfits who will have a healing spell for some time. Even when out of MP, Yuna can heal the party with Prey, a costless ability which, for the first half of the game, is your only method of healing multiple people at once. To balance this, it cannot be used outside of combat, and the amount restored is far less than even the most low-level cure magic. Yuna also gets early access to Isuna, which for a very low MP cost removes status ailments. Most of them anyway, we'll rant about that in another video. While it will take some time to earn access to any of them, Yuna's high magic stat also makes her great for dealing out punishment, should you find a way to teach her black magic. The only white magic that deals damage is Holy, a devastating spell that exhausts a buttload of MP, making it a little cost prohibitive. Yuna has no overdrive. In the traditional sense, anyway. Her central gimmick is her ability to summon Aeons on any of her turns. When summoned, the Aeon will be the only friendly character on the field, but aside from that, it's not much different than controlling any other party member. Aeons have their own health and MP, in addition to their own overdrives. The overdrive can be charged faster by selecting Boost from the command menu, which will double the damage you take from the next attack, but also greatly increase the amount of overdrive you get. If an Aeon dies, it harmlessly vanishes away until it's healed, and your previous party comes back out, rather than getting a game over. This makes Aeons great for when you know an enemy is about to launch an insta-kill or something like that. Anyway, back to Yuna's overdrive, Grand Summon, which will call forth an Aeon like usual, only now they'll have a full overdrive meter from the get-go. Yuna's access to Aeons, healing magic, and potential for black magic makes her an invaluable asset, and probably wins my vote for most useful character in the game. Aha! And you thought I was done explaining party members. This is the Ronso warrior Kimahri. He's confounding, and I don't use him much. Kimahri is a jack of all trades, master of none. All his stats are average, and he doesn't get any useful skills by default. His special ability is Lancet, an absorption spell that when used by the Ronso race, allows them to learn the skills of their target. Now this move stealer archetype is fairly common in Final Fantasy, but Kimahri's Lancet has two big problems. The first of which is its overall lack of usefulness. Very few enemies have an ability to steal. By the time I finished this run through, I had about 7 or 8, and I tested it on different enemies pretty frequently. This wouldn't be so bad, but if you don't get a new power, Lancet is a waste of a turn, because it does a pathetically small amount of damage. The second, just as limiting issue, is that stolen moves can only be used as Kimahri's overdrive. This would be fine, but none of these attacks are particularly damaging, as they're just the enemy's basic attacks, meaning the only useful ones are those that grant shields or health or other support effects. By the time you find monsters to steal those from, other characters have learned plenty of alternatives. So unless there's some weird trick or some post-game stuff I don't know about, I don't see the point in using Kimahri as anything other than a meat shield to soak damage or an item monkey. Okay, now I'm really done talking about characters for now. Our gang of protagonists walk down to the dock, and after a somber goodbye, they head off on their journey to save Spira. And also play Underwater Punch Soccer.
The wind. It's nice.
Unlike everyone else he's met in Spira so far, Yuna believes Tidus when he says he comes from Zanarkand. The reason? Jecht was a guardian for Luna's father, Lord Braska. She says Jecht would tell her stories about the same Zanarkand. Tidus tosses the idea aside as a coincidence, as his father died 10 years ago out at sea. But then, Yuna says something that catches his attention.
My old man, he died. 10 years ago, off the coast of Zanarkand.
I'm sorry.
He went out to sea for training one day, and never came back.
Why, that's the day that Jecht came to Spira.
But,
It's true, I first met Jecht 10 years and 3 months ago. I remember that was the day my father left.
What do you think you're doing? Stick a harpoon in him and we'll all get dragged under.
Zin is going for Kilika. We gotta distract him.
Alright then, time for our first boss. And of course, it's Sin. Well, part of him anyway. Sin sends out an endless swarm of Sin spawn bugs. So, while you can kill them to lighten the damage you'll be taking, your real path to victory is attacking the fin jutting out from the ocean with ranged attacks. After chipping off enough HP, the fin will retreat, but the huge wave caused by Sin's thrashing around launches Tidus overboard. Wakka dives in to help him, and the two end up face to face with another monster. Sin spawn Ecules. I think it's a weird transliteration of IQ, which means eternal or forever. That would make sense for Sin, I guess. Though, going off some of the other Sin Spawn names, it's entirely within the realm of possibility that the Sin Spawn names are made-up pseudo-words that just sound religious and important. Whatever its name is, it can drain your HP and summon Sin Scales to its side to attack you, but these can be destroyed with little effort. This is still an early boss, and thanks to that, there's not much to it. Holy shit. That was fucking brutal.